Good morning, afternoon, evening, however, whenever, whatever you're listening to us.
I just want to say we were live at 10:19. Thank you very much.
Oh, you did a great job bringing us live, but gosh, those of you who are listening in know that we record within our commercial industrial setting where we're actually, doing the work, physical application of servicing Jeeps. And Scott was doing some touch-up painting this morning, and
that's all I can say.
Wow. I mean, it's better that you guys are home watching us than here, because it smells very strong of a very pungent
May need to break out those old N95s.
industrial paint. Oh, my goodness. I don't even know what's going on. Jeffrey warned us. He was like, hey, wait till you get back in the studio space. You can smell it worse than it is out there. And he's not wrong. It's like trapped over here. Wowzers.
So good morning, Chip.
Wowzers.
He
My
was
name is
first
Neil.
on.
Yeah, Chip's first. My name is Neil with SFJ4x4.com. And joined in Grandma's Couch Studio, the
Producer, Jeff Shimano.
producer, the Italian stallion.
And the painter / mad scientist.
Yeah,
Scott
you
Brown.
really you did a thing this morning.
Well,
He's trying to hurt us this morning.
no, trying to get stuff done.
Trying to get stuff done. Doing
Out
a
of
little
curiosity,
touch-up.
what were you working on this morning that has all that paint smell over here?
I have 1,100 little things to paint for the M38 project, and so I'm trying to paint some of those.
And that's using a 2K paint, right?
Yes, it's one that you can mix in the can, and I need to know if that's going to work, because other things are going to be coming back sooner than later, and I need to go get some supplies, and I want to get those with it because I was raised by a 60-year-old guy that said you should make your trips count. So I'm over here trying to make sure this is going to work, so if it does work, I can get another can.
Now, additionally,
goodness.
if you haven't followed us on YouTube, go check that out
I was
because
gonna say, great
we
video
just
dropped.
dropped the video for
Yeah.
that.
Great
Good-
video
good
dropped
lead
over
in
the
for that.
weekend. Yeah, and actually, when I checked the metrics last, I haven't checked them this morning. When I checked it last, that was a performer as far as that, as
See,
far as that video is going.
So what I understand then is that if I'm on camera, it's going to flop, but if it's just a voiceover, we'll do all right.
It's Jeff's voice.
It's Jeff's voice.
Memorizing voice.
We are restoring a piece of history. Yeah.
So Joe's in the comments saying my JK is haunting your dreams.
That's
Yes,
true.
it is,
That's
Joe.
Actually, Joe, that's true.
100%. And then Daddy Jeep is saying hi.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, Rob. I've been enjoying Rob unpacking his adventure of the 24 hours of
I was going to
Appalachia.
say I actually just dropped a lead in on his video for the 24 Appalachia to another Joe who was in
Okay.
over the weekend.
Okay.
He was in talking about. He's like, "Did you see that 24 hours of Appalachia thing that you can go do?" I was like, "Actually, yeah, I have seen
Yeah.
that, and I know somebody on those trails."
That's cool.
And he just dropped a video about it. Turns out this Joe does know Rob also, but
Oh yeah. Their paths would have crossed. at
yeah,
one of the
they
local
do know
shows,
each
I'm
other.
sure.
But he's gonna go check the video out.
That's awesome.
And Chip, of course, says, "I guess Jeff has a face for radio."
Yes, I do.
That's
I will take it.
that's perfect. So, as far as what was going on over the weekend, I had a lot of social affair activities to be involved in. Not really anything too illustrious when it comes to servicing any of my projects per se. We've got a couple infrastructure jobs going on here at our facility, which have been long overdue. So happy to see big progress moving forward. We've got a lot of Jeeps that are on the cusp of comfort of turning out. So we've been, kind of just snowballing through Jeeps while we're waiting through parts and whatnot. So I've got my fingers crossed. We'll have a big week of trying to make some breakthroughs on some Jeeps and get them out of here. What-
Speaking of breakthroughs, that's one of the things we had to hold off on infrastructure was all the breakthrough on the concrete this morning. They're going to be
Yes.
coming in this afternoon.
Yes, that's the goal is they'll be coming in this morning or this afternoon and doing jackhammering and finally putting in a nice restroom for all of us and for those of you who travel in to see us and be part of the SFJ experience here on site, getting us a restroom appropriate for our customers and ourselves.
And Joe Brilla's in the comments saying, "Welcome to the 20th century."
Yay!
No more outhouse.
No more outhouse. No more outhouse. Nice. Nice. The McDonald's runs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So what was your guys' weekends? What was going on?
Well, I decided I should weld the brace back in the back of the car. I had cut that out a while ago to be able to do all that tail pan work because it was firmly in the way. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. All that's still as found inside there. So what I didn't, cut and weld and that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, maybe I should paint that. So I spent yesterday afternoon turning myself in different colors.
So you were painting yesterday
by brush,
and now you're painting today.
so I can put some anti-vibrating noise canceling stuff on there.
What is he talking
I
about?
don't know. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah.
And then put the brace in on top of that so that basically two pieces of metal don't sit there and bang against each other, driving my kids insane. So that is what I'm doing on the car. And then the other part, I finally ripped off the Band-Aid and decided where I was going to put the coil, put that on the firewall on the passenger side low below the heater. And what I told my wife as she came home from work was, well, I filled a lot of holes. I guess I can make 2 more.
Chip said he thinks the fumes are getting to Scott.
Yeah.
No, that's just
That's just
normal.
Scott.
That's just normal at
Scott
this point.
knees. Yeah.
Oh my! So it sounds like you had a pretty good weekend on the car.
Pretty
then.
productive weekend
And
on
I
the
did
car.
see a couple updates, right?
Yep.
So those who are following along on social media and you might not have seen,
Yeah, you can see
Scott's.
my black painted hand and the painted inside as best as I could show it, and the coil. It was a kind of a small, but how many times can you take pictures of painting the inside of a back of a body?
yeah, yeah, before it gets, and that's the worst part is trying to conceptualize for our customers and also what we do here is those little finite detail work
Yeah.
is hard to quantify.
Hey, here's another picture of it drying, and then I'm gonna do another coat here.
Here's another 15 minutes I spent, moving a 1/4 inch of
Yes.
a turn, so I didn't have to disrupt everything else in
Yes.
in its surrounding area.
Yeah.
No, I 100% understand. And Jeffrey, did you have?
I just worked on some house projects besides working on the nonprofit stuff. So the house projects, one of the things is where we have the laser in the house is upstairs on the finished side of the attic. And to prevent the kids from getting in there when the laser's running, we decided to upgrade the door handle, and I actually put a thumbprint reader lock on it.
Oh my!
So it was real cheap on Amazon. You literally
Couldn't
just
go for the full retina scan. You went to the thumb.
Yeah. you just grab the door with your thumb and it unlocks as you
what
open
wouldn't
it.
work for Scott when he ruins his thumb
Yeah,
painting.
but
See,
or
that's what I
grinding.
100%.
But
I
you
feel
can
like my
program-
thumbprint.
But you can program all your fingerprints to it, so
Oh, so
you
I
can
got
have
10
1,000
chances.
yeah, exactly. So
I was gonna say that's my phone does not like my thumbprint.
No.
And I have to start rubbing I gotta find
that's
like
why
a
I
clean
have
piece
Apple,
of cloth.
so I have Face ID. I don't have to worry about
Well, but you
So
put
anyways.
an Android
that. Yeah,
doorknob
yeah,
on.
it was cheap.
Android.
It's cheap. There is a backup key for it and everything too,
Well, that's
just in
good.
case. But so that was just a way to keep them out when the laser's running. Also, that's where all my audio equipment is, and other things that we just don't want the kids getting into. As
That's
part
kind
of
of fun.
as part of
That's
that,
something I would have thought about putting on something. you
well,
know?
it was, yeah, Kristen came up with the idea, and I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, then there's an old closet door in there that has one of the old-fashioned like 50s doorknobs that just twist. It's crystal like on the end,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
plastic, but
Are you like you mean like what's on Old Blue, basically?
yeah.
Yeah.
As
So,
one of the doorknobs.
so those tend to not work well all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and so sometimes you're like spinning the doorknob trying to get
Absolutely.
it to catch. Well, I was like, well, why don't I switch that old doorknob from the main door over to that?
Mm.
So then I was drilling out an old-fashioned door, custom fitting it so that it would actually work with a modernized door handle. So that was my main project for the weekend, on top of, like I said, running the nonprofit
You know
stuff.
what I ran into with an old door, and we finally just eliminated it from the equation, was it was simply not thick enough. It was an older door, and it was only like 3/4 to 1 inch thick. So the striker of it, actually, I couldn't even bore out the striker hole. Otherwise, it would have thinned out the wood entirely too much.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of stuck at that point, and ended up having to replace the
Well,
door.
there was
well, I
definitely
should say I replaced it. It's actually not even on the. It's
Well.
not hung at the moment, so I have intention to replace it.
that happens. But yeah, so there was chiseling, drilling, all kinds of things, but it's all good
Adapt
now.
and overcome.
Absolutely.
Adapt and overcome.
Works really nice. And then what's really fun about that, I think you'll really like this closet, is it's got a trigger for the light. So when you open the door, it releases the pressure and automatically turns the light on.
That is awesome.
It's been like that.
You're kind of outfitting this. This
No,
is
that was how it was when I bought the house.
really.
I had to replace the switch because it wasn't working when I first got it.
Yeah.
But it's literally just a pressure switch, and hardware stores sell it. It's really kind of cool. Fits right in the door track, so when the door shuts, it pushes in on it.
Huh.
I was like, I kind of like this. I might have to do this to more rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense
Yeah,
to
it
me.
was-
More.
I grew up in the house. You opened the closet and you felt around with all the where the switch was,
Correct.
and there's tons of clothes because you couldn't see the switch.
You know what? This is going to be a good segue because we're going to be talking about lighting
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
We are going to be following up a little bit off of the fun concept of Mardi Gras flashing that may or may not have just passed.
That's right.
And whether or not
Scott
you're
doesn't
getting
know what the
flashed at
flashing
in
is.
your
No comment.
in your headlights. We will be talking about that, but I was actually just, as far as upgrading household stuff, I actually upgraded a couple of my light bulbs in my house to the Hubspace LED voice command, so they actually activated with our Google. And
Yeah.
I got to be honest, I think that the pressure switch is kind of nice because in the middle of the night we're like up yelling like, "Okay, Google." Okay, Google. Oh, Google, turn the bathroom light on, and we're trying to yell at the Google in the middle of
It's
the
a
night.
21st century clap on, clap off.
It is.
I don't know if Google has an app. I know Alexa does, and you could put the app on your phone and control the lights that way.
So I can, right? But the app exists on my phone for the Hubspace. Now, my wife does technically have the Hubspace app as well. But getting her to figure out the app in the middle of the night is about as successful as her yelling at the Google lights to turn on as well. So needless to say,
Just give her back a light switch.
needless to say, I gave up on it and I just gave her back the light switch. I was like, you know what? We'll just turn them on and off. But you know what's really cool about those is because they are LED, and we're talking about that, they are dimmable via
Yes.
the app.
Yes.
And so so we have vanity lights across the mirror, and I have 3 of those lights in the vanity. I turn 2 off and I dim 1 down, so it acts as a bathroom nightlight, if you will.
Yeah.
And I just on my app, I turn them down. After the last person goes to bed, I turn them down. In the morning, I
Wait till I
turn them
tell
all
you
up.
the next part.
What's that?
You can set it to timer so it does it automatically at a certain time.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
I bet you we could do that as well.
I bet you could.
The stuff we don't even think about. The stuff we don't even think about. That is too cool. And we are going to be talking about LED and lighting technology, so that you don't get flashed. You get flashed the way you want to. You don't get flashed the way you don't want
Just
to.
gonna be quiet over here.
We're
'cause
just
every-
going to go to the comments for a minute here. So Justin says hello there.
Good morning, Justin.
Dan Connect said, always good to have a nose print for a backup on your phone when working in the garage with greasy hands.
Ooh, a
You
nose print.
You need to try that.
it's the only way that I can access them. I get so mad my thumbprint doesn't work
Only
on my
if
Google.
JB films him trying to use his nose.
My nose to get the phone to turn on.
Joe is asking, is this laser for targeting womp rats or bringing down orbiting satellites?
Orbiting satellites. Jeffrey, that's why they put a thumbprint. It's like Dexter's laboratory. It's Kristen's laboratory.
Okay.
Jeff is just
When
the
you open
accomplice.
the door, can we hear the noise from the lab?
As the air releases
Yes,
the pressure?
right.
Yes. So Justin said, yes, you go to Adapt and Overcome on your off-road or other service call. Sometimes it's interesting.
Oh, to say the least.
I love lights. I just got a light sponsor myself,
Nice.
and I'm curious who that is.
Yeah, Justin, tell us what your light sponsor is.
And then, Joe, if you have Alexa, ask her to open the pod bay doors. You'll enjoy it. apparently.
Hilarity will ensue.
Yes.
Somebody's got to. My parents have an Alexa. I'm a big Google guy. I'll have to ask. I'll have to do that. We'll have to ask Alexa.
Absolutely. Chip said, I went to Dollar Tree, bought 2 night lights for the bathrooms and 1 for the hallway. Old school cool. Remember when those were as sold on TV, the press lights that you just...
Oh, the tap lights?
Yeah.
So, fun story, because
Oh,
we are
there it
talking
is.
about lights.
I knew you had them.
So here we are. We're out east. This is like the early years of the business, and I had this I had a 30-foot enclosed trailer, and I don't remember if it was the RV. I don't remember what was pulling it. It was either way. We were pulling a big setup, and I had a 30-foot enclosed trailer, and pulling into the event, the lights go out. So off and on throughout the weekend, or you know what? Maybe it was just hooking it up. Maybe the lights worked on the way in, and we unhooked the trailer for the event. I couldn't tell you why, but
Please tell me you used tap lights to drive home.
so I kid you not, folks. I honest the truth. And God love our first responders and our police and highway patrol. Thank you for indulging
For
my
not pulling you
shenanigans,
over.
for not pulling me over the many things that I've done in life. But I didn't have lights, and my parents were out at the show. My wife was there, and so I promise you, my parents ran out. We bought tap lights at the dollar store. Kind of what Chip is mentioning, and then we use red tablecloth, right? Like the thin, like plasticky tablecloth, wrapped them, and then taped them to the trailer, and tapped them on, and that is how we drove.
I have one worse.
6-8 hours home on that one.
When I was in high school, a friend came over, and he lived on the other side of the county. If those don't know, where Asheville County is a really big county. So anyway, his taillights stopped working. He had brake lights, but no taillights on his S10, because that's what you had when you were, a car guy in high school.
It
So anyway,
still wasn't cool then. I
No.
don't care many truckers.
so we took a milk jug and painted the bottom of it red and duct taped a flashlight in the mouth of the milk jug. And taped that to the side of the truck, and that's how he went home.
I gotta say, Neil, he totally one-upped you.
He did. He took tap lights. Folks, we are talking about lighting technology today, so please stay in there. Stay into this conversation, because
I wasn't ready for that one.
This is why Scott and I are so good friends, because our give a darn is busted.
Man.
Our F's to give are gone, and
Hey, when I look at it, if you get pulled over, the cop will at least like what you tried.
I thought, what?
I
We
gave
gave
it
it
A for effort.
That's what I'm saying.
A for effort, in the fact that you painted the jug red.
Painted the
Well,
jug
it's supposed to be
red.
red.
Tap lights were on. We wrapped it in tablecloth. A for effort.
Wow.
We will be talking about lighting and LED technology, because that is so critical, so that you're not like us.
And it'll be a
To
little
do
bit
better.
brighter than a milk jug with a flashlight.
Oh my gracious.
Let me ask, was it a mag light, or are we talking like a Dollar Tree flashlight?
No, I didn't have any mag lights as a young person.
No, that
it
was-
was some cheap.
It was some
That's
treat
what I thought.
dollar. It was Walmart
looking
was
for
selling
D
$1.
batteries or C batteries to make the thing work.
Oh my gracious. Roy Hill says good morning. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
Nope, I missed
came
right over
through.
that.
And Justin has told us, what is Justin?
FCK light bars.
Oh, okay.
I've never heard of that
I'm
before.
not sure who that
I'm not
is,
gonna
but-
try to pronounce that.
No. Oh, well, I think it's exactly what Jeff did. Is what it is. So,
I mean, it's either that, or we have to bleep out what we're about to say.
that or Justin just set us up and roasted us on air, which it might be the
guessing-
case.
I'm guessing you get flash when you have those on.
My guess is you're getting flashed again, not in the way that you want to
No.
be. In that process,
I'm gonna
thank
juggle
you,
this.
producer,
and
to
just see.
juggle that one, right? So, and when we're talking about lighting,
It's a real company. He
Okay.
did not troll us.
he did not troll us in the process. Okay. And we have talked about different lighting options in the past. And we talked about, lockers before light bars and light bars before lockers. We have done some of our hashtag not sponsored sections on different lighting accessories.
He said, "Told you."
No doubt. No doubt.
We'll never doubt you again.
No, trust me. You have our trust.
We have just set him up to successfully prank us next time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. So we're going to be unpacking a little bit of LED lighting technology, and also talking about how it fits within what our industry has been doing for years, and where it's going, and what is the priority set. We're going to break down some of the specifics. Jeffrey did a really nice video on the gravity.
Which nobody watched. I'm looking at you guys.
That's right. If you're listening to this, you need to get online.
We don't want to
YouTube.
look at Jeff either. We understand.
Again, this is why the M38 video is doing so much better.
Face for radio. Back to Chip's comment. So it's a good video, though, and he and Davey worked really well at it, and I thought it was an appropriate unboxing. He goes through, gives some nice technical specs. He talks about, the fit and finish.
That's
the
what it is.
unboxing.
I don't normally do technical specs, and people are like, "Oh, he's talking technical. We can't watch
You
this."
think that's what it is?
Yeah, they're like,
There
"No,
is-
it's
no,
not
there's
coming
still-
from Neil or Scott, so it can't be real."
I
They're
don't
still
know, you're-
asleep.
Your air pressure video was excellent, and it's still one of the a widely searched and utilized.
That was
video.
because I was drawing on a parking lot with chalk. That had nothing to do with the technical specs.
He was at his level.
Scott's trolling you. It was
not
on your
wrong.
level.
He's
You're
not wrong.
Drawing in a parking lot with chalk as your level.
It was
Oh,
fun.
that is something. So, here we are. We are at this kind of technologically advanced lighting period in history, realistically. And we've come out of the dark ages
Of milk jugs and flashlights.
of milk jugs and flashlights. and we used to have incandescent sealed beam lights.
Yes.
Right? And we're going to talk a little bit about why you might be getting flashed on the road. Some people have certainly complained about that, and not flashed like you're at Mardi Gras, but flashed while you're driving down, a back country road or through town. And then ultimately everybody has this dream of once they've flashed you, because they think your off-road rig, because it sits up a little higher, has got the brights on, then you really hit them with the sauce. You turn on the light, and the light bars go on, and the pod lights go on, and you blind the heck out of them. And how does that happen, right? So where
Yeah.
does all this light, all this magic, how did we get from these dingy, realistically in World War II, you basically got a slit of
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
Right?
6 volt, not very bright. Kind of a candle out there. It's
Basically.
basically so somebody didn't run into you. You actually couldn't see where you were going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. As the M38, and I don't think it does, did it have blackouts on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're unfamiliar, folks, that actually, realistically, on our military Jeeps, we had what was called blackout lights, which was
Yeah.
basically like a inch by 3 inches or less.
Yeah, and on MBs and M38s both, they have what's called a cat eye. So it literally looks like what people imagine a cat's eye to look like. It's this weird arch-like slit on both sides. And so literally there's an opaque lens between the bulb and the outside, so that all you see is this like warm glow.
Warm glow.
It's not
And it
for
realistically
actually seeing
was to
anything.
just illuminate just a couple feet in front of the vehicle, and also so the vehicles didn't hit each other.
Yes.
Because the idea was we didn't want any air assault or enemy lines to be able to look over and
they
see
were
maneuvers.
so bad back then that Scott rumor was that they would paint the rear diff cover white, and they would mount a light on the floor of the bed of the Jeep so that it would light up the white diff cover, and you just followed the white spot in front of you. And if that guy went off the cliff, then you were going to go off the cliff in a couple minutes too.
Chuck's in the comments going, hated driving in blackout.
Yeah, Humvees have it too.
Yes.
As far as I know, they still do.
And so realistically, the idea is, for that, it was a functional purpose to not draw attention,
Yes.
right? And so realistically, we've gone from that as an industry and as a necessity within our military, personnel, to how much attention can we possibly draw to ourselves on the aftermarket retail side of things in our lights. And because ultimately, I know Jeffrey had brought up we're potentially going to unpack a little bit of RGB LEDs. You have wheel lights now. You have, what went from a functional rock light to being able to just see what you were kind of creepy climbing over in the dark. Because, of course, that blackout light idea, Scott and I absolutely wheeled when we talked about gray wheeling previously. We absolutely wheeled with limited light output so as not to draw attention to ourselves
Yeah.
in in off-road trails that were not exactly legal to be on.
Yeah.
Not that that's what we do now. That's what we did at one time.
We know better now.
Correct. Now the objective is to get all the lights, to get all fancied up,
Yeah.
and draw as much attention and light up the trail like it's daylight.
And then another thing, just because I'm the young boomer here, back in the day,
Young boomer.
yeah,
It actually fits for him.
yeah.
It kind of does.
It's weird, but it does.
For those that don't know, older cars actually had glass lenses that were then red, so you could have the best light bulb going, which you didn't because it was 6-volt and incandescent.
Sure.
But then if you had that one, just had to be a little bit less translucent than the other one, that light would be dimmer than the other one. So that's another problem we have with the vintage side is you can make the light as good as possible, but if it can't get through that lens worth of crap,
Sure.
and there, lots of them didn't have good diffusers, that kind of stuff, because they're literally glass.
Right.
So
And of course,
I
we
gotta
had
say, he just used a lot of really big words without messing up any of them.
that was a lot of concentration.
I mean,
was a lot of
translucent, opaque,
diffuser.
I'm just
I mean,
talking
I'm
about-
impressed.
He used up all his words
Yeah,
for the day. If you call in and you need customer service from Scott,
Talk to Jeff.
you are screwed. Scott has used up all his words for the day. His word allotment is gone.
Yes, I'll be over there painting.
I mean, you could say all the big words to
Maybe
him. He
that-
knows what they all mean.
my gosh,
It's
maybe-
just him trying to repeat the words. It's a
Maybe
problem.
that's what it is.
It's the
Maybe
paint.
he's maybe, folks, we've just unlocked the secret to getting Scott to have impeccable grammar. His vocabulary has
He just has to spend a little time in a
transcended.
paint booth.
He just needs to spend a little bit of time in the paint booth. Take a
Yeah.
couple big deep breaths.
I love my wife at this point. I try to say a word, I'll give like 2 attempts, and she just says it for me. And I was like, "Thank you." Moving on.
Moving on. That's what we have to hit it with.
Just hope the kids follow her, not listen to me.
So we went from 6-volt. We had a true filament light bulb,
Yep.
right? Because and those of you who are listening who may or may not, just briefly, a filament light bulb literally is a mini heat
Yes.
producing electrical. So the resistance between two, there's a two electrodes, I guess, is the
Yes.
way, and a wire between them,
Yep. And a
And-
vacuum.
and a vacuum, and we burn the wire between the two of them.
Yep.
That's really kind of the most simple
And-
way
and
that
when
an
that
incandescent
wire
light
burns
works.
out, the light bulb's burned out.
Right.
And all of us remember, switching out a light bulb and the light bulb being hot,
Yes.
right?
Being
Or
hot,
making
hearing the
noise.
rattle noise if the bulb was burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yep.
so we had a similar technology within our headlights for vehicles,
Yeah.
right? And of course, you go to that 6-volt. You only had 6 volts running through the filament,
Yeah.
so those were very dim. And we went to 12-volt. They
Yeah.
got ever so slightly brighter.
Yep. That was really light years ahead of where you were. And then we
Pun
had
intended.
halogens, seal beams.
Jeffrey just said it was a dad joke.
That's fine.
Oh, Scott technically hit it.
Anyway,
The paint booth.
so then we go to the halogen bulbs.
Man, I wonder what your productivity is going to be today. Maybe we just got
Did we just lose it all here?
to wake and bake every day for Scott to.
Anyway,
It's important to note, everybody, we don't condone any of that. But
No,
apparently
but
it's
the
working
owner of
well.
the business is currently condoning it for Scott. Wow.
so then anyway, ignoring these goofballs, what would happen if growing up, we always would take those old non-halogen sail beams out of your hot rod, put them away, and you didn't throw them away because you just didn't do that. They're
No,
not
even
bad
when
yet.
it was just a little dim, I'd still rebox it
Yes.
in the box and put it. It's an emergency. I'm going to put it
Yes.
on the shelf. There was like 6 of them stacked up on the shelf.
And my dad also, we didn't have a 6-volt car in the fleet, but we had a whole drawer of 6-volt bulbs because those were hard to get now. Anyway,
It's also important to note that pretty much you had a 7-inch round and a 5x7 at one
Yeah.
point in time, and those fit. I would
90%.
90% of vehicles that were on the
Yeah.
road.
But anyway, you put your halogen bulb in, like my 68 Chevy truck, and then you would, next thing you know, the headlight switch would get hot because now you're doing more draw and it's more voltage. So then my dad had this elaborate relay system that you had to retrofit to take the load off the headlight switch, and a big, long, drawn-out thing. But the important part of why I'm telling you this long, convoluted story is now you have LEDs.
Use the word convoluted.
And now the draw is like 0.5 amps.
Yeah, the nothing.
Nothing.
Right? They go to nothing. Actually, the retrofit of putting LEDs in a CAN bus system that wants to see a
Yes.
sufficient draw.
It gets
So
angry.
our JK owners will recognize that when they put more affordable, I'll call it Amazon headlights
And
or
Amazonian.
Amazonian lighting into factory positions, it will oftentimes trip a code on the back end of the ECM. So it's
Yeah.
not a code that will necessarily bring up a check engine light, but it's one that when you scan the computer will actually see a number of communication codes based on the fact that the ECM of the Jeep is not recognizing a sufficient voltage load
Yep.
across the headlights.
And also why they will sometimes pulse or flash
Hyper
because
flash.
it's trying
Hyper
to
flash.
am I on or not? I can't really tell. And that's
Correct.
why when we get into JTs and JLs, you have to go in and physically tell the computer, hey, stop looking for a load. You have LED headlights.
And before we get too far off the subject matter for our XJ owners out there, there was a brief moment for the headlight assembly where you did a wiring upgrade.
Mhm.
Do you remember that?
Yep. That's what I
And so,
was talking about with my dad. With-
right, because
with relays
as
and
an
all that stuff.
extension from what Scott was saying, for those XJ owners out there, there was a conversation about insufficient wire capacity, I guess is basically.
Especially for, I guess we should just say, HIDs were a brief moment in between, the halogens to where we're at now. And that was even more draw, more load, because now they had a fan in them to keep them cool and a big driver module. I never dabbled in that because my headlight switch was already angry. So
Right.
I did not go into HID technology. Greg did on
Right.
his XJ. And then we had to get housings. You could no longer just get a whole bulb. You had to get this one that you would insert a replaceable bulb into. And that
Which-
and then we had the colors. Remember that? You had blue and green and
For HID, you're
purplish
saying.
lights. Yeah, which is all different spectrums. And if you got too high up the thing, then you're really getting flashed.
Yes.
Or not.
Yeah.
And I dabbled with like 2 seconds into that and realized that the lifespan of those, because they were so hot, that wire would burn out really fast.
It will come as absolutely no surprise. Go ahead. Were
I
you-
was going to say, speaking of the heat on the bulbs, there's actually certain types that if you touch with your fingers, the grease from your fingers and the oils on that will
yes.
literally cause it to burn out faster.
All of them.
100%. And I was going to say, it will come as no surprise that I have always been, for the most part, I did not give a flying fig about my headlight technology.
Yeah.
I wanted big axles, big tires, and big lift,
Yes.
So I was not dabbling with the same type of lighting technology, but I was totally the guy who went for the off-road lights
Yep.
and the supplementary lights, right? And so there's almost like a little bit of a ish divide. There are people who want really high output out of their lights and maybe a fog light that kind of a minimal, but they
Yeah.
want what they have to work as exceptionally well as possible. And then you have like the, hey, just keep adding more lights
Yes.
mindset as well.
Which Neil loved the K5 with 80 KC lights on it and the triple roll bar. So he's going to go with more lights.
Yes. That's absolutely. And if you see my first Jeep, you will know that it had an obscene amount of lights. And I cannot be more tickled that amber or orange or yellow lights are back, because I was absolutely the guy rocking 4 of those facing forward
Yes.
in, 1999. So been there, done that, and happy that look has come back. I should have just kept the Jeep. I could have had it, stayed outfitted
So
the way that
so
it is.
quick, fun, mad scientist story about lights. For those that don't know, I had a Gremlin, and just like senior year of high school, I started building that, and we were at a big car show, and I wanted to do the housings with a replaceable bulb in it just to make it look different, because the reflector was on the back, and you had a clear lens, so it completely changed the look of the car. So I was all proud, and I didn't have a lot of money.
I'm going to take a moment and just say,
We should talk about reflectors in general.
well, we should, but he also said They did a Gremlin, which
Yeah.
is arguably one of America's ugliest cars
But
that
then you
has
put a-
ever been produced.
So then you put an AMC 360 in it, and it makes it all better.
And he said that putting a different headlight assembly in it changed the look of the car completely.
It did.
I got to tell you right now, amongst the car enthusiasts of the world, it didn't. It
Anyway.
didn't make it cooler.
So the technology was so infant on those round lights that the ones I bought at the show, I did have no clue were not that good. We know now that
Yeah,
people
sure.
go to a show to get rid of junk product, but I had not a clue. So I take these home, I'm all excited. I go to put it in there, and it has clearly on the top of the lens, top. And it doesn't fit. So those old lights had little squares to key them
The
into the
reason
bucket.
they were getting rid of it was because they didn't fit in their vehicle.
Oh, no, you'll just wait.
Okay.
So I go to painstaking. I literally cut slits and make the dent where it's supposed to be so the light is in there with the top and everything else.
Is this
And-
where Scott's Metal Shop started?
Sort of.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going down the road and I can't see worth anything. I'm getting flashed all the time. And I'm finally mad at the lights. I take them out and I put regular lights back in it. Then I realize, like a year later, they glued the lens on upside down.
Yes. Yes.
So the reflector was upside down.
And
Whoops.
Whoops.
for those of you, there's a YouTube video out there where I talk about the 5 worst cheap mods you can do to your
Yes.
Jeep and off-road vehicle. I literally talk about the odd, awful headlights that I have on Chuck Norris, and for whatever reason, I have not come off of them yet.
Yeah.
And every time I drive it at night, I say a little prayer for the people on the road with me because I'm just 100% blinding the heck out of you
Yep.
because my reflector is I don't know cattywampus to the
Yeah.
exact storyline you're sharing.
And it's nowhere near the technology we have now, but that made it so much worse. I actually was better off with the halogens than I was
Better
with those.
The halogens.
And that's why now I will just save up and spend the money once on good quality lights.
And what I did with Chuck, and I put Chuck's headlights in, I don't know, 5 years ago at this
it's
point,
completely different
6
now.
years ago, and I wanted the glass lens,
Yep.
and I wanted a interchangeable LED bulb because I wanted it to be serviceable going
Yeah.
forward. And I just darn near guarantee that I have run into an issue that
Yeah.
you have where the reflector, or that you had, where the
isn't
reflector is
good.
not good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's spreading the beam directly into oncoming traffic.
Yes. Not where you can actually see. out of it.
No.
So real quick in the comments, Joe Brilla said projector bulbs were never to be handled without gloves. Same with older photo finishing printers.
Yes.
That's the same line we were talking about with the oils from your fingers causing that.
Yep.
And then Justin saying, I have 600 watt halogens on my one Jeep, 100 watts each, and I have 6 of them.
I did it. I did. I had it in a KC light bar.
I mean, if you don't hear the alternator scream when you flip on your lights, what are you doing?
well, at the time that I
Yeah.
built that Jeep, and I had the same setup that Justin is talking about within reason. I took the alternator up to an old guy where a guy was
Yeah.
shuffling through the back, and
It's to
the
tune it
front
up.
counter. The front counter was filthy and piled with alternators and starters and old
Yes.
catalogs, you know what I mean? And the whole shop smelled like smoke and, you know,
Yes.
smoke and coffee. That's what it smelled like. And I put my alternator on the counter. The alternator that I had literally rebuilt at my parents' dining room table. And I was like, I need more. And he
Yes.
was like, well, I think I could put a couple windings in there. And that's what we did,
Yeah.
you know? So that's realistically not what we do now.
Yeah.
So what does today's market look like in the objective of giving this crisp, clear, clean light? And Jeffrey unpacked a little bit of that for us. And how do we measure light? Because we're talking about words that, right now Justin is talking about, watts.
Well,
right?
600 watts doesn't mean the same thing now that it did back then.
Yes.
Correct. Right.
And
it's
in reality, it always meant the same thing, but there's a whole different understanding of it with LEDs.
Right.
yes.
Because now we're into lumen and lux.
Right.
And we don't really talk about watts with LEDs. Is that correct?
So
Is this
when-
like horsepurs
when
and
when
duck
you're going to
power?
the store, you might buy a 20 watt LED that's a 60 watt equivalent.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, what does that even mean? It's based on the lux and the lumen of it.
Yes.
And what is lux and lumen for those who are listening in?
So lux and lumen are defining of light output.
Okay.
how much light output and how focused that light output is.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can have off the chain of one and actually have a dim, not a good focus beam.
Right. So your efficiency in that regard would be
Yes.
really poor. So there's lumen is the amount of light that's output. So a 5,000 lumen light may actually only be equivalent to a 20-watt halogen bulb.
Right.
But when you start factoring in that lux, the lux is measured based on the light output at 25 meters from the bulb.
Okay.
So that brightness is how focused it is what determines.
Which is one of the reasons why the best thing you can do is get a housing and a light that's designed to work together.
Correct.
When you go rogue and do what I did with the Gremlin and Neil's trying to do with the LJ, you're picking a housing that's sort of designed for everything, and you're taking a light bulb over here that's designed for sort of everything and putting the two together.
Yes.
They're not tuned very well.
And it's funny to hear us talk about that with light bulbs, but I
Mhm.
think to use your word tuned,
Yep.
they're not constructed to be optimized with each other. And
Right.
that is so factually accurate.
Because
And-
in the end of the day, it's just somebody designing that reflector, and they're going, well, I'll just put this here. They could move it a quarter of an inch over here, or a quarter of an inch up, or a quarter inch down. When you're designing that whole thing to work together, now it is an exact spot that they can do tests, and they can say, oh, what does it do if I move it over here, move it over there? And now I get that pattern I actually expect.
Right. And you-
So with it too, the other thing, the efficiency. What Scott's saying is, if you had that 5,000 lumen bulb, and you have 4,000 lux, that's a pretty efficient bulb. You're gonna have a pretty focused light.
Right.
But if you have a 5,000 lumen and a 1,000 lux, it's very
inefficient.
diffused and
Yes.
inefficient.
Yes.
so that's what Scott was talking about. You could have one that's off the charts and still kind of have a poor
Yes.
visibility out of it.
Correct.
And the thing with Chuck Norris specifically is the idea that I wanted a glass lens.
Right.
And I know that in our talking points here, we actually did discuss the fact that Hawley has come out with a light. We have used
Yeah.
them on a project.
Yep.
Inventory availability is mixed at best.
Yep.
But the idea for those of us who want that kind of old school sealed beam look, we haven't had a lot of choices because, as you were talking about tuning the housing to the bulb structure, much of our LED technology has been plastic housings,
Yes.
right? And
And-
so that plastic housing has affected the look of the vehicle.
Right.
JKs have had plastic housings, so it doesn't really matter to them.
Right.
But those of us who want that more vintage-inspired
Right.
aesthetic,
And Holly literally took it to another level. You can literally buy yellowish tinged LEDs
correct?
for when you really want to spend the money for LEDs, but you want that vintage candle look.
So that's the color of the bulb, and you
Yeah.
can literally get different kelvins on the
Yes.
bulb to get different
And
colors.
I'm curious. I mean, we went
It's the
with
temperature,
just
essentially.
standard white bulbs, but I'm curious how well the yellowish ones light up.
Now, just
you're
because
giving
it's
up anything.
popular,
So I can tell you, Scott, our studio lights are LED,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a yellow bulb and they have a white bulb,
Mm-hmm.
and you can control how much output on each of those bulbs are.
Yep.
And the yellow is just a different temperature than the white
Yeah.
that it's at.
right now the conversation with the yellows and the ambers and why you would want yellow on the front, because it's really popular in the Baja scene and
Mhm.
certainly the Ford, for whatever Ford and Toyota owners have really kind of pushed this forward, it seems like. And just recently, we've kind of re-adopted it back into the Jeep community. The idea that amber has always been allowed, permitted to be forward-facing. I know one of you guys looked up how the amber worked.
Yeah,
the,
so-
kind of the legal eagle stuff on that.
So if it's below, and this is I looked up for our state, know that it's different in different states.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for our state, you can technically have white lights below the hood.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be amber.
Okay.
But
But you can have amber and like as much amber as you humanly want on your Jeep or truck or whatever running down the road. Is that
no, there was stipulations on it.
there was some stipulation
Yeah.
on that?
I don't remember what they were exactly
I
Yeah.
remember that's what I thought was
'Cause there-
peculiar. You
'cause
had
there
looked
was-
it up, and I thought I was like, "Whoa, that's peculiar," because I
'Cause
thought you could just amber everything.
I believe if it was like above the windshield, it had to be covered on the highway or the road, but you could use it for off-road use. Even it didn't matter if it was amber or white,
Well, so
unless it was being used in emergency flashing lights.
huh? It's interesting because
There was a weird stipulation
There was a weird stipulation when it came to the legal piece of the amber, because of course we have semi trucks and big trucks that have cab clearance lights, and we have our trailers will be illuminated for side marker
Correct,
purposes.
and those are all measured locations that have to be placed
And
exactly
it might have been
right.
a light output.
May-
Was it a light output even though it was amber? You know what?
I don't remember to be.
Jeffrey had looked it up, and he had found kind of this quirky thing that made us all kind of scratch our head. Obviously, we're still scratching it. The
Yeah.
conversation with the yellow lights, which has become popular recently, was that they really had not been defined well for on-road use, but the light cuts better than amber, so it means that it has further visibility, while it's not actually a white light. And so the objective with using the yellow has become popular for foggy situations,
Right.
because the white actually just illuminates the fog,
Right.
Right.
whereas the yellow has the cutting power of the white.
I think we just lost our camera.
Davey,
Yep.
I don't. If folks at home can still hear us, let us know in the comments. But we've appeared to lost our camera. And so the white. Hey, and we're back.
Okay,
He unplugged it and plugged it back in. It's total IT move there.
it's perfect.
And walked away.
And mic dropped. And so the amber fog lights don't have the same kind of cutting power in
Yeah.
the foggy situation.
And growing up when I first started in the cars, that's what it was. If it was yellow, it was fogs for foggy situations. If it was white, it was a driving light
Yes,
for intense driving.
intense driving.
And again, just doing the young boomer thing of I have a Rambler. It has 4 headlights, separate high beam, separate low beam with the smaller round. And it is the cool thing on those to put yellows as the highs and the lows are white. I don't completely understand it, but that is a trend on those kind of cars.
Now,
Maybe if it was a rally car.
if Greg was on
I
air
don't know what they're
too,
trying to do.
he would be telling us the diffusion rate of amber cover versus a white light, and
Yes.
how much the lights diffuse, and it's a certain percentage.
Yeah.
So we have this conversation with lots and lots of technical specifications with light output and coverage and focus, which there is a whole group of off-road enthusiasts who are engineering lights that are sitting around having this debate, this competitive conversation about exactly the technical stuff, right?
Mhm.
Then there's a whole group of people who show up at the local Quaker State Jeep meet and greet and are like, I want pretty colors on my Jeep.
Yes.
Yep.
And those appear to be two completely different
Because then we're not
manufacturers and engineers.
we're not really worried at that point about performance. We're worried about pretty colors.
Right,
And we're sitting still and we're wanting it to look cool while it's flexed out on the RTI ramp.
right, and to combine the two to have performance and pretty colors is just priced out of the market.
Yeah.
It's unrealistic to have a competitive
Yeah,
price.
it seems like
and
you-
while we
you have
feel
one or
that
the
way,
other.
we actually spoke to some individuals at the manufacturing level.
Yes.
Right? And
Basically was you think your performance LED is expensive now, if we add pretty colors to it, it's going to get worse.
absolutely.
Right.
And it's valuable to know that LEDs, to kind of common knowledge, are all manufactured overseas.
Yep.
Yes.
They use precious metals, and that is a term as a umbrella, because the actual specific amount of stuff that's mined out of the ground is twofold. One, it's highly regulated here in the States, and two, the actual labor of pulling it out of the ground and utilizing it is, can be gotten cheaper elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
As part of the issue. The process is actually fairly laborious. So the issue that we have is that there is no, to our knowledge,
Mhm.
stateside produced So no USA made, certainly headlight or fog light.
So there are brands that will claim they are USA made, but it's assembled in the US. The
Yes.
light itself, LED lights, are illegal to produce in the United States.
Oh, you have somewhere that says it's illegal.
Yep.
Okay, that was the
it's a-
regulatory piece. That we
There
were
is a
talking about.
regulatory piece that prevents them from being made in the United States.
And what we're talking about there is the chip, right? So if I
Yeah.
go back to the incandescent light bulb that we were talking about, where we have 2 electrode rods with a wire between them, right? So that's your incandescent electrode.
It's where the magic happens.
Where the magic happens, the chip that is
With-
made out of precious metals for the LED light is the problematic piece,
which is
for
important
And I
at this point.
stateside production.
What I don't know is I don't know if that regulatory piece is based on the mining that is required for it, or if it's what part of that is preventing it from being made in the U.S. I just know that it cannot be made.
that
in
there
the
is
US.
a portion of that manufacturing process that has a legal ramification for production on the state side.
Yes.
Yep. And that,
Okay.
and in this moment, I think that's a good spot to say that most people already know this, but if you have regular old school headlights, you're driving in a snowstorm. For the most part, you're going to be fine. The snow's going to melt away. You're
Because
going to
of
be
the
able to
heat.
keep seeing because they are hot. If your hands are frozen, you can go cuddle with your headlight, and it will help.
100% true.
So when you
But-
talk about LED, what does LED actually stand for? Do you know?
I've
Light
done a good
emitting-
job at this
Did
point.
you want me to do it? Or
Go
no?
ahead.
Go ahead.
Light emitting diode.
A light emitting diode, which means it is actually producing significantly less energy
Yes.
to put out significantly more light.
When because of that, there is significantly less heat. if
There's no heat
none.
loss, right? So we've created a more efficient energy transfer
Mhm.
from electricity into light output, right? And that's really the flow of
Yes.
it goes, I have electricity and I'm creating light
Yep.
out of electricity, which is super cool.
Yes.
And that's where I nerd out on things.
And
you know?
and the less efficient the bulb is, the hotter it will burn.
Yes.
Physically hotter.
Physically
Right?
hotter.
Physically hotter, not a hot spot in light output, which is
Right.
another talking point, right?
So now we've gone to this flip side where now you have LED headlights, and
And the more
There's
efficient they
people
are,
actually-
the cooler they are.
there's been
Literally.
conversation
Literally.
specifically on the JLJT argument that people are purposely ordering their trucks or Jeeps with halogen
Incandescent.
headlights
Halogen, yes.
because they live in the northern states and they don't want to deal with that. And then you have people like me that are blind as a bat, and I will promptly just pull over and clean them off. Thank you, because I need to be able to see where the heck I'm
And
going.
you did, you purchased your truck with your headlights on there.
Yep.
And we have talked about this on a previous podcast. You have the Diode Dynamics plug
Yes.
and play package.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, they were
Um,
installed aftermarket by somebody.
Yes.
By the
Previous
previous
owner.
owner.
Yep.
And Diode Dynamics is a manufacturer who claims a USA-based product
Mhm.
of sorts. And
And they are trying to dabble a little bit into the playing because there is a halo as part of them. They're kind of making it look like a factory JLJT headlight. So at times it will flash as a turn signal and turn, is a little bit RGB in that essence, where it'll be white at this time and then this time it'll be yellow. So that technology is in that light a little bit, but it's not like blue flashing, that kind of stuff.
yeah, you
It's-
can't.
So
do
it's
the-
important to
the
note that that's
red,
actually
green, and-
different than RGB.
That's fine.
You actually have two different types of diodes in that,
Oh, okay.
whereas RGB allows
is a singular diode,
it's-
right?
Yep, it allows the different lights to
Change.
change
Okay.
temperatures, basically.
Yep, I'm 100% with him. So the cool thing about Diode Dynamics, so there's a handful of manufacturers who are focused on what I would call the performance-driven LED technology.
Mhm.
ARB, Morimoto, Diode Dynamics, JW Speaker,
Mhm.
and formerly the conglomerate of Rigid and Trucklight.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, one of the technologies was Trucklight, and Rigid was a conglomerate of the two, and they are actually right out of Jamestown, New York, and they were a stateside manufacturer, and they were looking for headlights for big trucks.
Mhm.
And that's why they were making this technology to make the big truck more efficient. Obviously, in the big truck market, everything just cost more, you know? And so they were able to sell their lights at, of course, if we go back to that halogen incandescent type technology, we were used to paying $20 a headlight.
Yes.
Right? At this point in time, you should prepare yourself to spend about $1,000 for a set of headlights.
Yep.
Yes.
For quality ones.
For quality, for performance driven. Yeah, thank you.
And it's also important out because I think Rigid was spaced up where it snows. They made a light with a heated grid that automatically comes on.
They were first to market with the heated grid.
And
So
you didn't have that build-up problem anymore.
what I think of anytime I hear about that heated grid is the old school heat tape that you wrap around your pipes to keep them from freezing.
Absolutely.
It's essentially that, but for a headlight.
Yes.
And cool thing about those headlights was there was a temperature regulator within the headlight itself. So that was an automatic process. So if it never got below, say, I don't know, 50 degrees or 45 degrees, that unit wasn't turning on. It wasn't unnecessarily heating. There was no additional switch. It wasn't like a wiper.
And even then, it's designed to only just be above freezing temperature. It's not going to start burning your headlight.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just to keep that snow melting off.
from building up.
Just enough above freezing temperature to keep it from building.
Because it's such a fascinating thing because that cold, wet, blowing snow, we don't think about it because most people had halogen headlights. It would hit a headlight and it would immediately, warm up and
melt away
enough.
I'm going to try to jump into comments here because we got a lot building up. So Daddy Jeep asked, I had to make a work call. Did you cover lockers before light bars yet?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We are all about light bars
we did,
over your cruddy lockers.
We did a 4-part series on light bars and lockers. If you'd like to see that, that you go back in our library. You'll find it eventually. But we definitely covered that topic.
I'll cover it again. I'm here for it.
So anyways, Joe's saying, don't forget that LEDs don't put out much heat, which can have an issue in snowy situations, which we ended up getting to anyways.
There we are.
And then Chuck, I put Hollies on the Shaggin' Wagon. 1990 halogens were scary dim.
Yes.
Totes.
Chip and Joe said they heard us when we lost camera. Joe Brilla only heard Yoko Ono. Were you singing again? I didn't notice.
Joe, would you like me to serenade you?
Then Joe O'Brien, NPA, anything above the headlights must be covered. And I think it was very similar in Ohio, but there was that weird regulation.
Yeah, and I know that down in Allegheny County, which is, Pittsburgh, they're very particular about anything above the headlights covering.
Yes.
Also for the, and they have, the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and how they like to operate. They tend not to like when you take the doors off, and they tend not to like when you have your
They're
LEDs
trying
exposed.
to fix that. The doors.
I know. They desperately keep trying.
So anyways, Darla's saying morning, guys. And Joe said no to your singing. Sorry.
Oh,
I guess
fine,
you're not allowed
whatever,
to sing.
Joe. So
maybe if
we
you
talked
serenade
about-
his Jeep, it'll fix it.
Whoa, it'll want to work so well that it'll run away. You know what I mean? It wants to get away, it'll fix itself.
It'll drive itself onto the tracks.
I have about 5 vehicles that are making me
The
lose
bane of your
sleep. The
existence.
bane of my human existence.
Yeah.
And that's one of
I
them.
see them. It's like when you're in like middle school or high school and like in gym class, you got into a spat with somebody, and like for like a few weeks after that competitive spat,
uncomfortable.
it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like you make eyes at each other in the lunchroom.
Only in
you
this
pass
one,
the
you would
hallway.
go up and you'd be like, here's a candy bar. And the person would be like, I don't want that candy bar. Because you keep trying to reach these Jeeps. You keep coming across the aisle and be like, I like you. Here's a candy bar. And it nibbles on the candy bar and then
It
bats
tells
it
me
away.
to go pound salt.
Joe says he's got a goat lined up for a potential sacrifice. Joe, I think we need 5 at this point.
And Joe, you're not the only one. I need 5 for the 5 Jeeps that won't leave the property.
Yeah.
And I'm too
Is
dumb to give up on them and be like,
Is that for lack of trying?
oh goodness, isn't that the darn truth? So technology and headlights and auxiliary lights. I do want to. You started to talk a little bit about RGBs, and I think it's valuable you unpack that a little bit for our listeners.
So there's RGB and there's RGBW. There is a distinct difference, and that allows more range of colors when you go to RGBW.
Okay.
What is important to note is that they are basically a computer circuit on a strip. So if you get the strip lights, you can literally see the circuitry on it.
Yes. I'm going to take a moment, and I just find it to be absolute Merlin magic at the fact that you can cut LED light strips.
Yeah.
So when you're cutting it, you're cutting where it tells you to. There's literally 4 little circuits on an RGB light. There's 4 circuits. And then when you clip the piece onto it, you're allowing that circuit
It's
to be
pinching that it's circuit.
yeah, think of it as your favorite type of splices where you just clip into the wire and it suddenly connects.
Triggered.
So it's just like
Jeff,
it's just like that,
no,
but better.
No,
Pound salt.
no.
Pound salt.
So, anyways,
If you have Scotch locks on your off-road vehicle
You don't-
right
you.
now,
don't use them.
we see you.
Yeah.
This
Rather
is
you,
this is part of the
and
reason
we're
why
saying not nice things about you.
this is part of the reason why RGB lights are not performance lights, because
Yes.
it's that same idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, with that being said,
But those are still light years ahead of the when we used to put neon tubes underneath our cars.
so
God, neon tubes are
You
so
remember-
cool.
those were
Be careful
So
when you
so
put
got
it on
that
the
nice
lift.
glow.
Oh,
So anyway,
it
don't
had
crack
such a
my-
nice glow.
Don't
It had
crack
a
my
warm,
my tubes.
Yeah, your tubes. You couldn't drive them in like you had that lower,
Oh,
lower
yeah.
rider. And You
Yeah.
couldn't drive them in Conneaut, Ohio, because
It
we
would-
have potholes and
yeah.
speed bumps,
Yes, it
and
would break.
so
everybody's breaking tubes.
what's different about like the LED strip lights versus what people are putting on for rock lights is now instead of circuitry running through the whole line, you actually have individual wires.
Uh-huh.
So your individual wires go to a controller, and that controller will allow you to decide which color you want it to be. That controller could be a Bluetooth module, or it could be a actual remote. You have many different options there. But what happens is in these lights, if they're not wired exactly right, you could end up getting the wrong colors.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
You can connect multiple lights together, but if you mix up the wires on that process, you might have a red light over here and a blue light over here, but you set it to green.
Sure.
Right.
So it's
Sure.
there is a lot that goes into it, and you have to be careful with the wiring, making sure any corrosion gets in there, your lights will start doing weird things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that there's also despite the fact that they require less electrical efficiency than your halogen bulbs do, and certainly your HIDs, that some manufacturers cheaped out on the connections, right? So the
Oh, yeah.
connection you're talking about,
And because it's again less voltage and stuff, you can run a smaller gauge wire,
smaller gauge
which
wire,
is more susceptible to corrosion
damage,
and
corrosion,
breakage.
Exactly. And so we oftentimes we had a swath of people coming to us years ago who were bringing headlights or had just installed headlights,
Yeah.
and they just flat out weren't working,
Yep.
right? And they're going, but I just bought them. They're brand new, or I was just giving them as a gift, or
Yes.
whatever.
We heard that
Well,
a lot.
And additionally, if you think about it, if your RGB lights are inexpensive, but they're using 4 wires for it, and we know how expensive wiring is right now,
Yeah.
if your lights are cheap, that wire is cheap.
Well,
Sure.
most of them, it's aluminum on top of it, which is really bad for
Yeah.
corrosion.
For longevity.
yeah.
Right. So, I mean, RGB is very fun and very cool. We have Jeeps ourselves that have RGB functions to them that have, rock lights or some type of quote unquote underglow. As far as one of the more famous manufacturers who did a fun color accent, because color accenting is a big part of our Jeep community. Rigid was running their Radiant series,
Right.
and what they were doing with the Radiant series was they were giving you a color.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to run the RGB line where you had, individual chips and some extra wiring and that expensive process condensed to an affordable one, Rigid was saying, hey, we're a performance driven light manufacturer, and we're going to give you a performance white output,
Mhm.
but we're also going to then give you a fun accent color, and we're going to put the same
And
technology
they're going to make
into.
it separate so that
They were absolutely separate.
so your reflector for the performance light was basically one separate piece, and then behind that was just backlit with a color.
And
That's
that's very
correct.
similar to what you were talking about with your headlight having amber in it. It's
Yeah.
the same concept. It's not actually RGB.
Right.
It's a separate process to give you the best of two worlds
Mm-hmm.
without actually being RGB technology.
Right.
Right. So it's valuable to say when it comes to actual rock lights, our more performance-driven rock lights are Uno colors.
Correct.
Right?
Usually white or amber. What is nice is there are products out there that do make lens covers, so you can switch out the colors of your lights by changing the lens.
Right. So if you
The
want
light
to
is still the performance light.
do an accent color and you have a red Jeep and you'd like to illuminate the ground in red, hint hint, this may or may not be happening, follow along, you would have lens covers over the performance lights themselves.
Yes.
Well, and people sometimes forget rock lights are actually in some instances a performance light. Like you absolutely are using it in a rock at dusk or night situation, so you can see the rock where your tire is.
And ultimately, I think like many things in life, we oftentimes like to mimic the highest level of professionalism or highest level of competition. I mean, it's the idea that on Thanksgiving, oftentimes before the meal, a group goes out and plays a quick pickup game of football, and then you eat your meal and you sit down and you watch the football game, right?
Yeah.
Or someone going to the game and having the black line under their eyes. They don't need it for the glare.
You're absolutely right.
But they want to look like their guy on the team.
That was a really good analogy.
I'm actually really confused right now.
I'm telling you, the fumes,
Oh my
folks.
goodness.
It all
We've
cleared out at this
unlocked
point.
something at this
When
point.
we were watching the Super Bowl, he thought it was a golf game,
I'm
and
the
here he
golf-
is making
the sports
awesome
balls.
sports references.
Yeah.
I don't
Maybe
understand.
that
Who
would
are
help your
you?
golf game if you put
Who
the black
dis?
lines under your eyes.
Who dis, mad scientist?
Holy cow.
Wow. I
Just because I don't understand football doesn't mean I doesn't know sort of
you
what
can't
happens.
understand people, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that I'm amazed that this technology had it. Well, it was not even a technology, I guess. It's to say that the function was to illuminate the obstacles,
Right.
because it's harder to see with this big, massive tire,
Yep.
and I want to be able to place it just right in my line.
Right.
They were using lights to illuminate underneath the Jeeps, the wheel wells.
Right.
Also, I got to be honest, I love the idea of having pod lights mounted just inside the wheel well, so that you are either flooding or spotting 10 to 14 feet directly in front of that tire. But then you need to illuminate on the outside tire so you don't shadow as well. Those things are actually happening in competitive rock climbing activities.
Right.
And then we take that, and as a consumer market, you go, I'm not actually going to
I'm never going
compete.
on the trail.
I'm never going on the trail, or maybe I'm never going to compete in competitive rock climbing,
Right.
but I kind of want to look like it. Or maybe
Right.
I might do it, so I'll put that on there.
Or it'd be cool if, my Jeep's blue and it was actually a blue light that was an accent
Right,
color.
because
Yeah.
we love accents in
Yep.
our industry. And so I think that there is a marriage of form and function
Yeah.
that happens with this, and there's an emulation, right? We aspire to represent ourselves. We know we're not professional football players, but we're going to watch them later in the day, but we like the game, and so we're going to go out there and we're going to have fun and we're going to play the game, just like you illuminate, underneath your Jeep for the parade, for the meet and greet. You're not actually using those for competitive rock climbing or off-roading, but we're playing the game,
Back to the comments of those 5 Jeeps, Chip's in here going, separation anxiety in Jeeps is a real thing.
I couldn't agree more, Chip. So I think we have unpacked a good bit of lighting technology. We've gone from that incandescent halogen experience, filaments, to light emitting diodes and
Yep.
individual chips and construction of the lights themselves. The very last piece that I will leave you with is one of a installation comment. The idea that when we have lifted vehicles, you need to re-aim your lights. Right? And so it really has nothing to do. We oftentimes get people who go, oh, these lights are so bright, everybody flashes me. No. I mean, yes, but no. You actually have to have them positioned.
Two
better.
parts. One, it has to be positioned properly, and 2, it should be a properly focused light.
Correct.
If you're buying a cheap knockoff light, it may not have a good focus to it. So it doesn't matter how you align
It
your
can be
light.
spread all the way.
And no matter
cattywampus.
how you change your ride height, if it's just a leveling kit, you still have to change your light focus because it was designed for the way that vehicle was set up from the factory.
I'm
and
gonna
now it's different.
I'm gonna call out a reputable brand because XK Glow has a reputation for good lights, they don't have good focus on their headlights.
Yep.
Interesting.
We've literally had to struggle to try to adjust and overcompensate for the wide beam pattern that they have into oncoming traffic.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we have had customers come in who've purchased because they actually had a 9-inch. Didn't they have a 9-inch or no? Were they the 7 with the
7 with a ring
9-inch
around
ring.
it to make it look
Okay.
like it fills the
But
void.
you got the nice RGB, the fun piece of,
and it's a fun light. I'm not discrediting that
and
at
we
all.
use XK Glow, and
Absolutely.
there are other manufacturers that we could share with you. that are on the
XK
fun
Glow's new
side.
controller is just awesome. I can't
It
wait to
just
start
goes to
playing
show
with
they
that.
have the playing color lights, and they had to give up some of the performance just to make it affordable.
Correct.
There's a little give and take there. If you're getting that kind of capability, you should know that you're giving up something else.
And I will get, since I hit them hard first, I'm going to go back and give them a little credit. Their customer service is outstanding because we did have a controller issue on one, and they were immediate. Yep, that's a controller issue here. We're sending you a new controller for it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that the lighting industry as a whole, we're seeing the side-by-side market pick it up. We're seeing way beyond the Jeeps, right? We're seeing the whole off-road community.
Yep.
Obviously, our performance-driven cars, they want, when they're doing the Subaru meet and greet, the classic car, the Rambler guys, lighting technology is something that kind of universally unites us with, as a sector within the automotive industry.
All you need to know is that it's a good market is when Holley gets involved and they make their own lights.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, they would not do it if there was not a market.
and they made a light that filled a niche void,
Yes.
right? They weren't like, oh, hey, we're going to buy,
Yeah,
we're going to build rock
vintage
lights.
period. That's the old squares, the small squares, big squares, small round, big round, and they're making it bold in so you don't have to, put your light in upside down.
So Joe
Exactly.
O'Brien's in the comments. Can you imagine running pod lights on the knuckles in the East Coast?
And I toy with it constantly. I have friends up at Iron Rock Offroad that are big proponents of it, and they're in Minnesota, and there it is, and
Whoop, there it is.
Whoop, there it is. And they run it, and it's fun and it's cool, but the road grime, the mud, the muck that we find ourselves in when Jeffrey picks up a small tree up into the undercarriage of his Gladiator.
Yeah.
I would have destroyed that light.
You would have destroyed that light.
I don't know how I didn't destroy anything else.
Remarkable, really,
It was
right?
Pure luck.
And so the idea is like I get it out west where it's it's more dry. It's you have
Open.
that real sticky rock. It's more of an open expanse. I still think they look cool, and that's
Yeah.
the challenge that I find myself compounded by is we emulate what we think looks cool, even if it's not. I haven't done it because I'm more functionally minded, but
Yeah.
man, if I had a set of Nilights. Nilight is a Amazonian manufacturer that you almost buy them exclusively on Amazon. They're actually a really quality import light. They're cheap, and so because they're cheap for what they are, I keep thinking about putting them on that knuckle light position. Because I'll be honest with you, if it
they
gets
get
ripped
hurt,
off,
yep.
I'm meh, you
Yeah.
know, at that rate. So, but of course, before I put lights on, I should probably figure out exactly what's going on in my hub so that I can have 4-wheel drive again.
Yeah.
I got that rub over the weekend. Whether or not I fully functionally have 4-wheel drive. I thought I had it figured out. I was running down the road, and all of a sudden I heard a noise like when we were kids and we put baseball cards in the spokes of your tires.
That's never good.
And it was this, and that was my hub, internally machining itself. So clearly not right. It looks like I might be going for some drive slugs from
I'll say
solid
drive
axle.
flanges are in your future.
In my future, I pulled them up, and I just couldn't. It just wasn't a priority for me in that exact moment. But looks like I hopefully will pull the trigger on it here sooner than later.
Additionally, in our future, we were talking earlier, I think we're going to try to make something happen here coming up for...
So we have advertised that we need to go on a wheeling trip with you, our friends, families, and listeners, followers of social media. The guys had teased maybe like a JT roundup, if you will. And we definitely have been talking about doing a spring run. So that needs to be on your radar, that is something that we are looking to organize. So look for that to drop soon. We will not have a podcast next week, so we will have a week off. We've got some things to attend to in the shop. We're very busy, and we've got some family activities and appointments to go to. So no podcast next week, but we will return the 1st of March to
Daddy
the first
Jeep
week.
wants to go wheeling. Well, this is a JT trip, Rob. Go get yourself a JT and come along.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm kidding. You can come, but
you could probably outwheel him in that Grand.
Yeah, bring that Dub J.
bring the Dub J.
I wanna
Rob.
see the
Bring
Dub J.
Dub J. We got some stuff that's coming down the pipe.
Yep.
It's important
Chip,
to note.
we're not toying with your emotions. We're going to try to force it to happen.
It's important to note this weekend is the Dayton Off-Road Expo. And we were longtime supporters of the expo. They've Beth and her husband have been very good to us in the past as far as display space and booth space. It's very much a regionalized event to the Cincinnati, Dayton, Ohio area, but you get a lot of folks coming in across the Indiana, Illinois ways up from Kentucky. And so really cool way to get outside. Typically in the past, the weather has not been as nice as it has been this winter.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a great way to beat the winter blues. Right now, the weather's so nice. Go outside and, rip around. It's pretty decent around here. Out east got slammed more than we did, I suppose. But
Yep.
Where this is, it's a great off-road event that you can go indoors. Vendors, part sales, cool off-road side-by-sides, monster trucks, big trucks, Jeeps, the whole gamut will be there for you to enjoy. So definitely something that if you're in our new northeastern United States area, you should prioritize going to. So we've got a couple things coming down the pipe, and that you'll want to look forward to. Anything else for the good of the order?
I don't think so.
All right, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.